Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I've been doing a lot of pedal demos recently and I thought it was about time I showed you what I'm actually using on my board in 2023. So let's take a look. Right, well you should have Pedalboard cam up on the screen now. All of this is going into my UAFX Dream 65 amp sim pedal. That's up on my desk here, so you won't see that in the shot, but it's just over here, and then that goes out in stereo into my interface. I'm not running a stereo pedal board, it is all mono, so the only kind of stereo separation you're getting is when it's hitting the Dream pedal. This is the clean sound straight into that amp sim. So just quickly, let's cover the signal chain. I'm going straight into the Vox wah, which I keep separately off the board, out of the Vox wah into the polytune, and then from the polytune we're hitting the compressor. Then out of the compressor into the Boss SY1, from there into the Boss OC5, and then we're hitting the drive stage. So we come out of the OC5 and we're hitting the red side of the King of Tone, which feeds into the yellow side, out of the King of Tone into the Origin Effects Halcyon Green Overdrive. From there we're going into the Beatronics Vespa. From the Vespa it's on into the Super Overdrive, the Wazacraft version. Then we're hitting the Big Muff, and then we're on to the modulations. So from the Big Muff we're going into the Earthquaker Devices Aurelius, out of the Aurelius into the UAFX Astra. Then we're hitting our delay and reverb, so we're into the Starlight from UAFX as well, and the Golden Reverberator from UAFX. All of that kind of loops back round into the loop station. But yeah, that's it. Pretty simple really. There's nothing kind of too fancy going on. I've got my drive section set up like that because I want to be able to run drive into fuzz and fuzz into drive, so that's why I've kind of got a drive pedal sandwiched between the two fuzz pedals. But to be honest, that might change up a little bit if I kind of fancy moving things around. It's really quite easy to move that drive section around. Anyway, so onto some sound. So you've heard the clean sound, but let's just refresh that for you. So I always like a bit of compression, so I'm going to start by bringing in the SP compressor. It's set fairly subtly, so I've got the volume halfway and the blend halfway, and the amount of compression on the little toggle switch is set to the medium setting. So here's how that sounds if I can grab my pick. So without and with. But yeah, I think you can agree there, fairly subtle. It's not really clamping down and squishing things, but it's, you know, just controlling the notes a bit. And then typically I don't play completely clean like this, so I use the yellow side of the King of Tone as kind of my bass, sort of edge of breakup kind of tone. So that's what this sounds like. Got to add in some reverb. So that's quite a big reverb. I'll probably pull that back a little bit. So here we are again with some reverb. And I'm using the plate reverb in the Golden Reverb right now. It's just the sound that I'm into right now. I don't tend to use the reverb on the Dream pedal unless I'm demoing a pedal directly into that on the desk. I'm always using the Golden Reverberator if you hear reverb when I'm using my pedal board. And before we get too kind of overdriven, I'll just show you what the wah sounds like. So that Vox wah's got quite a different frequency sweep to the standard Vox wah. I think it has a little bit more bite, or at least that's what I hear anyway. So let me show you how I'm using the Boss SY1. Right now it's set up pretty subtly. It's on a pad sound, and it's mixed quite low against my dry signal. It's just kind of building out the background behind the guitar. And you know, you can do loads of crazy stuff with that pedal, but right now I just like to keep it fairly simple. It's just, for me, it's just when I want to build some loops, it kind of builds out the sound a little bit and just gives me a bit more to play along with. So we've got the OC5, that's mainly doing kind of bass sounds for looping. But one thing I really love to do with that is put it on with the fuzz. Right, let's look at the Halcyon next then. So I use that in kind of a couple of different ways. If I want to kind of just get a little bit more gain out of my bass sound, I might kick it in. Here's without. And here's if I bring it in. Gives it a bit more bite and a bit more grit. So again, without. So the other way I like to use it is as my kind of bass tone rather than the king of tone. It kind of sits in the mix differently. It's different frequency range to the king of tone. So here's the king of tone. And then here's the Halcyon. So I think you get a little bit more clarity out of it maybe. I mean, that could just be the way I have them set, but I just think it's a slightly different tone that just kind of brings the guitar a bit more forward. I typically like quite dark sounding tones, and this one's definitely a bit brighter, just, you know, breathes a bit more life into the guitar if I want to. So kicking back to the king of tone, we'll skip the Vespa, we'll come back to that. The super overdrive is really, it's a lead tone on top of the other drive pedals. So on its own, it sounds like this. But when you stack it with the king of tone, you get a bit more gain and a bit more sustain. And then if you bring in some delay as well. And then I can boost it even more with the Halcyon. So while we're talking about delay, I've got the Starlight on now. I'm using that mainly in the tape delay mode. I do have the Boss RE202 back there. The only reason I'm not using that on the board really is because it's so big, it takes up more space. and I wanted to get more on there. But yeah, really my favoured pedal is the Boss. But yeah, like I say, this takes up a little less space and does similar sounds. And it's got that kind of analog delay in there, emulating the Memory Man, as well as a digital delay if I want to use something a bit more modern sounding. So here's how that sounds, how I've got it set currently. So for modulation, I'm using the Aurelius from Earthquaker Devices. I took a look at that recently. You can check that video out up in the cards. I've got it set to a chorus sound that's very reminiscent of the Boss CE1. And the Aurelius is actually fairly loosely based off the CE1, just with a load of extra modes and what have you. But yeah, it's a really cool pedal. It sounds a bit like this. Still got the delay on there, let's turn that off. And then I've currently got the Astra set on a tremolo sound. What's great about the Astra is it's really quite a simple pedal to use. My cat is going absolutely mental, and I don't know why. What's great about the Astra is it's quite simple to use if you want to just access a couple of different modulation sounds, and you have that preset button that you can assign various different things to. You can assign tap tempo to and what have you. I'm using it in tap tempo mode, but if I press and hold, I'll get a preset. Can't actually remember what the preset is, so should be interesting. It's a phaser, so there you go. Just quickly, while we're talking about the presets, I don't think I've got anything particular set in the Starlight that I'm using, but in the Golden I've got a really big washy kind of reverb for really atmospheric kind of stuff. So. And when you combine that with the delay, of course, it's going to sound even bigger. And then finally, let's take a look at those fuzz pedals. So right now, this Beatronics Vespa might well be my favourite pedal. It is a really kind of spluttery, Velcro-y style fuzz pedal, and it's really converted me over to fuzz. So I did take a look at the Swarm, you can see that back there, maybe, recently, and that's a really cool pedal, but it's also really kind of crazy and has a lot going on. The Vespa takes that same fuzz sound but really strips it back of all of that extra stuff, the modulations and the harmonies and all of that, so you just get that awesome ripping kind of fuzz sound. And then you can also double click the pedal and it'll bring in octave as well, and it just sounds insane. I'll leave it kind of with the King of Tone on as well and some reverb, because it's just a massive sound. Seriously, I could play with that sound all day. So you might have noticed there I brought in the octave as well, the OC5, to kind of bring out that bottom end on it. And it just sounds so massive, especially with that big reverb. Let's quickly take a look at the Big Muff as well. I'm using that as a more kind of traditional style fuzz. So let's have a listen to that. And then the only thing we haven't talked about is the looper pedal and the foot switch. Probably not going to do any demos of that today, but what that's doing is, well, obviously the looper pedal is there for looping, but it's a Boss RC5. It's got the rhythms built into it. It's got like 99 memories, so you can pre-record stuff, you can put samples on there, all sorts of stuff. Really cool pedal. I've downsized from the big RC10R with the double pedals. That looper was cool, but honestly, it gave me such a headache trying to figure it out. Sometimes I would just mess up, and I'd be recording a loop for ages, and then I'd mess it up completely because I just didn't understand the pedal well enough. It's probably my fault, not Boss's fault. And then the FS7 foot switch, I've got that set up to control the RC5. So we've got a tap tempo on the B switch, and then A will stop if you press it once, and if you press and hold it, it will clear the loop. It's just a little bit of added functionality that makes the RC5 a little easier to use. Alright, well, let's play you out with some noise, I guess. Well, if you made it all the way to the end, thanks so much for watching and checking out my pedal board with me. If you did enjoy the video, consider subscribing to the channel and liking it. It really does help out. And if you want to check out some of the pedals that are on my board right now, I've done some videos of them over here. You can check them out. Alright, well, thanks again and catch you in the next one. Cheers.